Thank you. Welcome to BCP Eastern Planning Committee for Thursday, the 25th of September 2025. If we can please open with housekeeping.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of this building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you for those notes. So number one, apologies.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Lawrence Williams and Councillor Felicity Rice.
And two substitutes?
There are no substitute members, Chair.
Thank you for that. So I'm Councillor Paul Hilliard. I'm the chair of this committee, and we'll just go around the room, just introduce members.
My name's Marion Lepedvin. I'm vice chair of this committee and I'm councillor for Newtown and Netherlands Ward.
I'm Joe Salmon, councillor for Moordown Ward.
Gillett, councillor for Topper Woods.
Gillian Martin, councillor for Boscombe West.
Michael Tarling at Christchurch Town.
Jo Clements, Penhill Ward.
Councillor David Flagg, Burton Grange Ward.
Toby Slade, Muscliffe and Stratton Park.
Simon Gould, Development Management Manager.
Rebecca Rhodes, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to the committee.
Thank you. And then we'll be having presentations by planning officers Darren Henry and Mufueli Mubakawani. So that leads us on to declarations of interest. Councillor Martin.
I do apologise, I was asleep then. Yes, I've got an interest in the second one, the 98 Glaston Road East, so I will be sitting in the public gallery and watching.
Not participating.
Not participating.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
No more declarations. Okay, item 4 is confirmation of minutes of the meeting of the 28th of August 2025. Are we happy that they're a correct record of the meeting? All in favour? Agreed? Thank you. I will sign them. Number 5 is public issues. After the officer presentations, we will hear any public speakers by any ward councillors who wish to speak on that item, which leads us straight into item 6, schedule of planning applications, and 6A is for Richmond Park Crescent. And if I can ask Mr. Henry to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located at 4 Richmond Park Crescent, Bournemouth, and it's for a change of use from a HMO to a hostel. Please note that this application is done retrospectively and consists of a 7-bed hostel for supported living under Class 2, which is owned and managed by the BCP Council. In 2018, Richmond Crescent was acquired as a HMO by the council for use as a temporary accommodation. In July 2023, the council began using the property as a hostel. Unfortunately, housing officers were not aware that a planning application should have been submitted to regulise the change of use to a hostel. This was not known until the planning enforcement team contacted them and advising the officers to submit a retrospective application. As can be seen from the aerial photograph here, the site is located at the corner of Richmond Park Crescent and Richmond Park Road along here. The proposal involves no external additions or alterations to the building. It is therefore considered that the proposal has not resulted in any impacts on the character and appearance of the area, as no changes have been made. There are 2 houses either side of the property. Number 2 here and number 6 here. As no changes have been proposed, no impact of overlooking or overshadowing will result from the proposed use, as can be seen here. With regards to the future residents, there have been alterations inside the building to change the layout. Also, the minimum sleeping bedroom area for anyone over 10 years is 6.5 square meters as set out in the houses in multiple occupation, and 7.5 square meters in the nationally described space standards. All bedrooms meet these requirements and therefore are acceptable. The rear garden, there is also plenty of space for the occupants to have access to outside space. It is therefore considered that the living conditions for the occupants are acceptable. With regards to access for vehicles, no alterations have been made so that it will be as existing, and there is sufficient space for at least 3 cars to park. Highways have been consulted and have had no objections to the proposal. Therefore, it's considered acceptable from a highways perspective. Also, this slide shows you the areas of use. The yellow here indicates the parking. The green here is set aside for the bins, and the purple colour here is for the cycle parking, and this yellowy orangey area is the outside space for the residents. They don't have access to the full garden area, so this is so that the staff are able to easily monitor residents outside. Homelessness of all forms across the council area has increased significantly in recent years, and local authorities have a legal duty to assist those experiencing homelessness. Providing suitable and safe temporary accommodation is an important element of meeting that duty, whilst providing support to people who are experiencing traumatic and challenging circumstances. Enhanced staff presence has enabled closer and better management of the service offered to its residents, with the staff and residents having greater level of engagement, resulting in positive outcomes, specifically with regards to moving the residents out of homelessness more quickly and into independent living. With regards to antisocial behaviour, the council has developed robust management procedures via their management plan, with levels of security to deal with this effectively. The management plan for the accommodation states that the council works closely across all departments, including environmental protection and the antisocial behaviour team, who have a wealth of experience and knowledge in addressing issues of noise and antisocial behaviour across all communities within the BCP area. No incidents of antisocial behaviour have been recorded at the application site, either during its use as a HMO or since its use as a hostel. However, to provide more clarity on the management plan, Sarah Field from the Tenancy Services team, whose role it is to manage the property, will discuss the enhanced services and how this is set out in the management plan. In conclusion, the proposal will provide much needed temporary accommodation to those who are homeless, along with 24/7 support and supervision to help the residents gain employment and independence. The proposal is acceptable with regards to the impact on the character and appearance of the area, highways impacts, and impact on neighbouring amenity, and has measures in place via the management plan to reduce nuisance noise and other antisocial behaviours. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, for the presentation. So now if we move to speakers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have 2 speakers registered in objection to this item. That's Peter Webber and Joe Pollard. If you want to make your way up to the table, you will share the 5 minutes speaking, please.
Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Webber, and I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Richmond Park Crescent. BCP Council purports to be a democratic council, ensuring the rights of the people and to be projected of fair governments. Is everybody in agreement with that?
If you just give your speech, yes,
Right.
please.
I believe that officers from this council are in breach of this valued process, working to their own agendas and not involving the residents in the decision-making process. At a public meeting attended by local residents and our wonderful ward councillors, BCP officers agreed to inform residents of any changes to 4 Richmond Park Crescent. We were not told that it had been running as a hostel. We only found out this when a retrospective application for a change of hostel appeared on the lamppost in January. So we feel that they're not communicating with the residents. Despite over 20 objections with email address, we were not informed about this meeting. Thanks to Sharon, we are here. Otherwise, this meeting would have gone ahead without any representation from the residents of Richmond Park Crescent. As you can hear from my voice, residents feel disadvantaged by this political manoeuvring and are unable to take part in any of the democratic processes. Right. When you vote or whatever you do, please remember this is not just a vote about the changes to Richmond Park Crescent. It will reflect your view whether this is a democratic process has been adhered to. And I do believe this could have been different. You know, we could have, instead of enforcing practice on the residents, it's about bringing communities together so that we can both work together to have a proper community. But we do feel very disadvantaged. Thank you for listening to me.
Oh, hello, my name's Jo Pollard. I live directly opposite number 4 Richmond Park Crescent at number 1. And I urgently need to draw the panel's attention to 18 months ago. BCP housing team treated the residents of Richmond Park Crescent with utter contempt and complacency. And after housing an HMO with a handful of residents that caused us no issues, without any consultations with residents of Richmond Park Crescent, extensive few months of conversion turned it illegally into a 10-bed hostel. And obviously, as you know, through the public meetings and BCP enforcement, this was reversed. 24 hours a day of ASB ensued. A hostel is no place for within a residential community. All 10 residents were in the grip of active addictions, daytime staff not qualified to monitor the residents and would lock themselves in to monitor the residents and would lock themselves in, leave us outside to endure all the screaming and shouting all day and all night long. I was extremely frightened too, and the night-time weekend staff admitted they were frightened of the residents too when we spoke to them. That's insight. Not only did we endure residents ASB, but other homeless people who would think it was an open house and try to gainfully gain access at all hours of the day and night. I had people asleep, unconscious in my driveway and pavement, fighting in the street, drug dealers, active soliciting. Do you think this is suitable? We have so many families walking to various schools surrounding a lovely park that's only 18 yards away, and other young families living directly. Kieran Douglas, our BCP housing portfolio, says communities need to be safe. I was too frightened to venture outside my house. Sorry. I now stage four terminal cancer, and I don't know how long I have left. Is this fair? Sorry about my phone. My bedroom is 10 yards from the pavement, and I spend a lot of my time in there. Planning housing documentation of its proposals is not worth, from previous experience, I know is not worth the paper it's written on. We saw it all before. Thank you, panel. And sorry about my phone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have the applicant, Sarah Field from BCP Housing. If you want to come and take a seat at the microphone, you will have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Field. I'm a Senior Intense Housing Management Officer for BCP Council, and I'm here today in support of the application. I want to express our gratitude to members of the Planning Committee for taking the time to review the proposal and determine this application. I oversee the management at 4 Richmond Park, and I witness the important positive work that takes place with our residents. People experiencing homelessness will generally need some support. Homelessness as an experience can be traumatic for anyone, and accessing the right support at the right time is an essential part to helping people through trauma. To illustrate how important this is to people, I'm going to share with you a couple of stories of our residents' experiences while staying at Richmond Park Crescent. The first resident's name is Paul. Paul is a talented artist who worked for many years in creative jobs. Several years ago, Paul suffered a relationship breakdown, resulting in his mental health deteriorating. This in turn led him to prolonged periods of rough sleeping. Paul always found it difficult to fully engage, accept help and assistance when he clearly needed it, and as a result, he never quite settled or secured a home. Earlier this year, he was provided with a room at Richmond Park, where we were able to build a positive working relationship with Paul through staff being present. The property provided a safe and warm, welcoming environment to him. Over time, he became confident and actually opened up to staff. Paul had a real talent for painting, and we were able to support him in connecting with art projects at Richmond Park Crescent, which was shared and appreciated by everyone living there. This, in turn, contributed to Paul by building up self-confidence and his self-esteem. This important work has helped Paul to where he is today. He now has a permanent home. He's been successful in gaining part-time employment, both of which are a real credit to him. The important work described can only take place because of staff being present who help in real time. We are aware there is a stigma associated with homelessness, and this is something that we are actively working to eliminate through education and dialogue. We hear the concerns set out in the public comments, which have been considered in the Planning Officer's report. Please note, having a greater level of support and supervision available on site should positively reduce the risk of any adverse negative impact to our local community. To recap on the management plan, all residents in temporary accommodation agree to licence conditions restricting unwanted behaviour. Staff can better monitor this if they are present and available at the property. We value the voice of our local community and will always continue to work with them. To end, I want to leave you with a second story of Joanne. Joanne is a woman in her 30s whose passion in life is included love of her dogs and fashion. She found herself rough sleeping for a short period of time after fleeing a serious domestic abuse relationship. Joanne's situation and choices available to her were limited at the time, having developed a dependency with alcohol. After being verified through outreach services, she was provided with a room at Richmond Park Crescent. With a safe environment to live and staff present to support her, she was able to address her dependency issues and housing needs. Joanne now lives in her own private rented flat, rebuilding her life and relationships with her family. We sincerely wish both Paul and Joanne all the best in their new homes, and we are able to help others in similar situations achieve the same. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. We hope you agree with the officer's recommendation to grant permission and vote in favour of our proposal. Thank you.
And now we have the ward councillor, Councillor Carr-Brown. If you'd like to come up to the microphone, you have your 5 minutes. Thank you. Just in case.
Good morning, committee. And yes, I'm Sharon Carr-Brown. I'm one of the councillors in the area concerned, and I've been working with the residents on this for the last couple of years, and with officers as well for the last couple of years, because this application has been a long time in the making. The officer's report says that no advice was needed for the applicant from the planning team, but it has taken 2 years to come to committee. It's unclear what was happening in the intervening time if advice was not being sought as to the need for permission and the type of application required. The report also seems to lean heavily on the management plan from the applicant for its information, and the objections of the neighbours, based on the functioning of the property at the time the application was made in December 2024, are not adequately reflected in it. Up to this January, local residents had faced 18 months of significant disruption to their lives from the operation of this hostel, and that was under the same management plan that is now offered as one of the main reasons for granting the application. What's notable from the management plan, given the history of this hostel, is its lack of mention of the community around it, proactive measures proposed to communicate with them, and a feeling of responsibility towards them. We need this plan to be stronger in this regard in order to ensure that we don't return to how things were a year ago, which was terrible. As you've heard, this was a successful HMO for many years before being converted without notice to a hostel by BCP. Residents first alerted me to what was going on when the people who moved into the hostel were the cause of drug dealing and drug taking in the road, soliciting, drinking, shouting and violence, and general ASB that was upsetting, unsightly, and totally alien to this quiet residential street. In instances like this, we often think of NIMBYs and label residents as snobs or privileged. I can tell you, hand on heart, that this is not the case here. 1 or 2 may have mentioned house prices in their objection letters, but this is far from the primary driver of their opposition and not the reason I support them in it. They were welcoming and neighbourly with the HMO and have no intention of being anything other than that with anyone who lives in this road if they are in turn treated with respect. The loss of trust with BCP over this development and the way the hostel was managed for the first year and a half is a real and ongoing concern. The hostel is now settled down, and since the application was put in last December, things have improved. The nighttime disturbance is no longer happening, noise levels are what most of us would consider normal, and the drug dealing, drinking and soliciting have gone. This is down to the mix of people in the house and the management being tighter, including for the out-of-hours operatives where there were previously concerns. You can see from the objection letters what the residents put up with, although the examples from mine were redacted for reasons I don't understand. I won't rehearse them here, but I want to be clear that the people who live near this property fear their return. They fear that an effort has been made to get this application through and that things will return to the bad old days when permission is granted. I ask this committee to think very carefully about conditioning their permission, if granted, so that any lapse in the management of this building, whereby the community is once again subjected to abuse, frightening scenes of people lying in the gutter out of their minds on drink or drugs, shouting and fighting outside their front windows, and finding strangers in their gardens, means the swiftest of enforcement and the use class is rescinded. The second condition outlined in the report is that the running of the hostel should be in strict accordance with the management plan to ensure the facility is well managed. However, we were told that the management plan was in place 2 years ago and there were significant problems with how the house was being run then. There were many contraventions of it then with little recourse. For example, drugs and alcohol may not have been tolerated in the building, but they were tolerated immediately beyond the curtilage of it and left to neighbours to witness and deal with. Overnight staff did not take responsibility for what was happening outside, and residents were seen taking alcohol inside. We asked the committee for a condition that partnership working with local residents is part of the management plan. I would suggest that this includes proactively providing near neighbours with a 24-hour contact number for someone responsible for the hostel, a commitment to consulting them on any proposed changes to the use of the building, and an acknowledgement that liaising closely with them is a public duty and part of the successful running of this facility. This level of accountability would reassure neighbours. The local residents I'm representing here today don't mind who lives in the road, as long as they're neighbourly, friendly, and respectful, and that includes BCP as a landlord. They support BCP tackling homelessness, and we've heard the excellent testimonies from residents, but they also want a quiet life and a safe environment for their families. If you grant permission, please also ensure you also guarantee that for them through the appropriate conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. If you can. So, Mr. Henry, is there anything you wanted to come back on things that have been discussed by the objectors or the councillors?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've been in contact with Sarah, and who's been in contact with the antisocial behaviour team to look at their records into any incidents of antisocial behaviour associated with the property, and none have been recorded. Although there may have been incidents, but on record there are no incidents.
The suggested conditions, did you want to comment on those? The one about the revoking the use class and also partnership working, would you say they're already existing?
I think the management plan sort of covers that area.
Okay, Ms. Henry, we're going to wider councillor questions now then. So, questions? Councillor Tarling?
Yeah, I know it's not normal, but obviously a lot of the issues here and the objections centre around antisocial behaviour. Councillor Carl Brown has indicated that there was a significant amount of antisocial behaviour and that she has been working with the residents for the last 2 years. I would like to hear more details on that. I'm rather confused that the planning officer has contacted our ASB team, who are usually very good on recording ASB notices. I've done a fair few myself as a councillor in the last 2.5 years, and to hear that if there was the level of antisocial behaviour that was mentioned by Councillor Carl Brown, that it wasn't recorded. So I would be interested in hearing if that is why there's a difference. The councillor is saying there's been a lot of antisocial behaviour. Our officer is saying there isn't. So I'm sort of struggling who to believe here.
And Mr. Henry, did you want to comment on that? And I see the police weren't actually give any views, but would they have been engaged in this process at all?
Well, I can only go off what the Sarah, who had contacted the antisocial behaviour team, and they had looked into their records when it was used as a HMO, and since then as a hostel. And according to that team, there are no recorded incidents of antisocial behaviour. With regards to the police having been called out, unfortunately, I'm not able to answer that. I'm not aware if they have or haven't.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Salmon.
So we've had a couple of what sounded like very sensible suggestions from a ward councillor for conditions, and then we've been told that they are not required because they're covered by the management plan. I might be being incredibly thick, but I can't see the management plan in here in the report we've got. And given Councillor Tarling's comments, I also hear alarm bells ringing when I hear from residents and from a ward councillor, yes, there were issues with antisocial behaviour. Now they've been addressed. And then we hear in the report, oh no, no issues ever with antisocial behaviour. It sounds like there needs to be an improvement in the recording and reporting of incidents. And I'd like to see in the management plan that that's in there. And that if that's in there, we can go, well, the management plan is a condition. We don't need anything extra. And if it's not, I wonder if we can beef that up with a condition to make sure if things do slide, which seems to be the concern, it's not that as things are now, it wouldn't be acceptable. It's if they were in the past, it wouldn't be acceptable. We need to make sure this won't get how it was in the past, and we've conditioned that if we're going to consider approval. So sorry, I'm saying in a long-winded way, can we see the management plan?
Yeah, so the management plan is one of the supporting documents on the website. So it is accessible there. As the report says, it is that 24 hours a day coverage, staff being on the premises 9 to 5, and then there's a call-out contractor, as Miss Field explained. The management plan also talks about the suitability of the residents. So there is zero tolerance on alcohol and drugs. They're made to wear the neighbourhood, the neighbouring residents. They're made aware where they are and what the rules are. So from that basis, the management plan, as we heard from the officer, does set out the criteria for those who reside have to follow it. And we've already got a condition in the report before us to say that, yeah, it's got to follow the management plan.
To follow up then, does the management plan explain why there's been this history of antisocial behaviour that's been experienced by the residents and the ward councillors, but there doesn't seem any record of that? Because I don't feel we can be confident unless we know how that's been addressed, how that failure to report or to record has been addressed and wouldn't happen. So if in 6 months' time it does get awful and we'd still be told, oh, there's been no reports of antisocial behaviour because the mechanism doesn't work, because it doesn't sound like anybody has identified why it wasn't working before and put a solution in place. But maybe I'm wrong, having not read the details of a management plan. I'd like that reassurance.
Okay, I know it's not normal practice, but if the committee's agreeable and Miss Field's agreeable, if you can just return just to focus on those two aspects of people saying up until December 2024 there had been issues, and what the council does to respond to that, and what you're doing now, what has changed, because obviously residents have noticed a positive change. Are you agreeable, committee? Yep. Thank you.
Is that it? Hello? Yeah, that's it. So we did have 2 committee meetings back in 2020, not committee meetings, sorry, residents meetings, where we met with the local residents and with Councillor Sharon Carl-Brown as well. And we did give out sort of information leaflets, signposting residents to our ASB team and through Dorset Police as well. ASB actually attended the meetings as well, just to make the residents aware who they were, what they do and how to signpost. So I did personally email the antisocial behaviour team before today's meeting, and I asked them for a log between 2018 when it was used as a HMO to 2023. They confirmed that there was no report, and then I sent a further email just to confirm what they had logged from 2023 to date, and they confirmed that they didn't have anything logged. So obviously I don't know where the discrepancy is, but that's something that we obviously need to look at and address.
Councillor Salmon, did you want a specific question about the?
I guess I'm still worried that nobody can go, oh, I tell you what, the reason we've got no antisocial behaviour reported is bumpty boo. We'll make sure it won't happen again by doing X, Y, and Z.
I think through good staff training, we've obviously, as it was raised in the residents' concerns, was with our overnight security team. So we've just made sure that we've got that good engagement, that positive rapport with the management team, that there are any concerns, they know how to action and act upon that now. And our robust training with our staff, we've got very regular staff now. Both staff members have been there for over 2 years. They were aware of the property, they've got a good relationship with our residents. We use risk assessment, suitability. I think we've done very well in that period of time in terms of creating that calmness and well-being for the local community and importantly our staff and residents.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for balance, Councillor Carl-Brown, did you have a specific point to add?
Yeah, I just think it's worth mentioning. So I can't obviously speak for why the house itself hasn't made any ASB reports, but I can understand perhaps why the residents didn't, which is that they're unfamiliar with the system. So the police were called. I was coming down the road one day and I found an ambulance dealing with somebody who was passed out in the gutter, who was associated with the hostel. I just happened upon that one day. The fact that we had 2 residents' meetings already tells you that there was an issue that had to come to a residents' meeting.
Okay,
now,
we'll park that.
yeah, I made it very clear that things have improved, but equally, so I think that in terms of the ASB, I think for the residents, it's because they didn't use that system for the council. The police, however, have been called.
Okay, Councillor Gillett.
I was just wondering, I've had experience of similar types of things in my ward, and sometimes people will report things correctly to the ASB team, but if they report a crime, so if it's drug dealing, that doesn't get recorded as ASB because that's unlawful behaviour, but that is covered under your licence agreement in section 5, because you say antisocial behaviour or unlawful behaviour. And the other thing is sometimes people will send in a photograph of 2 people looking shady in their mind, to the ASB team, and they don't record it as antisocial behaviour because it's just 2 people standing on the street. Do you think those are possibly the reasons why antisocial behaviour is underreported in this case, or?
Yeah, I think it would be unfair to comment because we certainly haven't got the evidence to document that from the ASB team. But just reflecting on what Councillor Sharon Brown just said with regards to an ambulance being called, then surely that doesn't class as antisocial behaviour. If an ambulance is called to a resident in need, I don't see how we can deem that as ASB.
Thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, similar to Councillor Gillett, I've had a couple of instances in the past where and worked with the antisocial behaviour team who we've had some very good ASB officers working on it, and when they're
just questions
engaged, the question is that we haven't got any instances recorded from the ASB team. We haven't at the moment got any instances from the police. Now, the issue is that the police don't necessarily submit criminal activity to a planning committee, and I'm thinking that's maybe what the issue is. And if we decide to go this, I think we do need to take Councillor Carl-Brown's recommendations to heart. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming to the desk. Yeah, it's a what?
Super quick follow-up question.
Sorry.
Would from a management perspective, if we added the condition about having a telephone contact for someone on site to section 6 of your management plan, would that be difficult? Do you think that would be manageable?
Oh, sorry. We do have a 24 hours emergency line for BCP, and if any staff on site that were covering that period during an evening or unable to support or manage the concern raised, then they can reach out to that team. Yeah, and for residents could possibly use that. So there is a number already in place.
Okay. Right. No, sorry. If you take your seats back in now,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just add, that's why I added the word proactively into what I said.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with all the compassion in the world, if somebody is in the gutter requiring an ambulance, the ASB is how they got there and why they got there.
Okay, I think it was valuable to have that facts, 'cause that was the main issue. So if there's no further questions, we're going to debate now. Okay, Councillor Salmon.
So I think hostels like this always come with challenges. You know, can't kid ourselves. It does place a burden on the community, and our council often struggles to manage that burden. That's not because of the failings of any individual officers. Our officers working in this field go above and beyond, but our council's technically bankrupt. You know, we've literally got no money. We're constantly cutting services, constantly cutting corners, getting stuff wrong. I mean, look at how this application's ended up in front of us. I would hardly be reassured as a resident to be told, oh yeah, we'll manage this all well. Oh no, we haven't even got the process of applying for it to become a hostel, right? But we can't sort all of those issues out as planning committee. You know, these sites are necessary, all of that. We need more sites for tackling homelessness, rough sleeping, all of that. I don't think we could ask officers for any more reassurance on how the site would be run. It's annoying these places never end up in Camford Cliffs or Sandbanks, you know, it's never in the communities who are probably better placed to deal with all the extra pressures. But as a planning decision, I can't see any reason to refuse. I'd like to propose that we accept this with the existing conditions, with the management plan. Yeah, I can't see that we can do anything different. I feel really uncomfortable refusing any kind of support for homelessness and rough sleepers.
Okay, thank you for that proposal. Councillor Slade?
One of the conditions is we adhere to the management plan, but the management plan says it's proposed that the property will use no more than 7 bedrooms for single people. Can we make it a condition, just a condition by itself, that it's maximum 7 people, rather than having to go to the management plan? Can we make it a condition that it is 7 people?
And with that, you would second the proposal, right? Okay. Can I just go back to either Mr. Henry or Mr. Gould to confirm that? Because obviously the application before us is about specifying 7. Well, no, it's a hostel, but we're talking about 7, or we propose that property will use no more than 7 bedrooms for single people. Is that robust enough, or does it need to be in the management plan as well?
Thank you, Chair. Whereabouts were you reading that from? Sorry.
So that is in the point 3 of the description of development.
Just bear with me. I can't see it in the description of development. Just a change of use from. It's paragraph 3. You mean?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that wouldn't be sufficient to place the cap on it being no more than 7. I mean, obviously, there will be a limitation because of the number of bedrooms. The description of development, which is at the top of page 1 of the report, talks about it being a change of use from a HMO to a hostel. So I think it would be reasonable if members wanted to go there to add a condition stating that there should be no more than 7 occupants.
Okay.
If members felt that was where they wanted to go.
Yeah. And Councillor Salmon, you're happy with that? Okay.
Yeah, perfectly happy.
I appreciate you coming in early, but I think there might be a few additions to the conditions as well. So, Councillor Clements.
Thank you, Chair. While I am a huge supporter of tackling homelessness and appreciate the terrible situation that individuals experience from homelessness, I don't feel very confident in what I've heard from the way the particular premises has been managed, actually. And listening to the ward councillor and the representative of the neighbours in the area, I don't think it's acceptable at all for residents to have to live in fear and not be heard when they have these serious concerns regarding what's happening in a neighbouring property. It would appear that the neighbours weren't aware of the support that was available, and from everything else that I've heard, I just don't have confidence in the management plan. I can't support this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clements. Councillor Martin.
I'm totally agreeing with Councillor Clements. It's basically, I'm very, very baffled that before, when it was just an HMO, there were no problems, and now you've got made it into a hostel, and there are problems. And to be quite honest, if Councillor Carr-Brown mentioned somebody, I totally agree with you. So an ambulance had to be called because somebody's laying in the gutter, and the management aren't taking that on board. It does worry me that they're just sort of sweeping it under the carpet. Also, there might be a management plan in place, but if you've got poorly trained staff, which, like Councillor Salmon has said, if we've got no money, we can't afford, excellent, staff. You've got poorly trained staff, and sometimes I think people that go into jobs like that, sometimes it's just for the money, sometimes it's because they think they're being in a caring role, but being in that role, it's not a popularity contest. If people are coming in later, if people are coming in late at night, causing problems, and a blind eye has been turned to it, it's not being kind. They need to be more disciplined. And I just think, and I've got no confidence in the management, and so I'm totally in agreement. And I would second Joe in refusing this application.
Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation that in the management plan, it does state that the House of Multiple Occupation provided 7 rooms of temporary accommodation for singles and couples, and it was stated 7 occupants. So that it wouldn't be 7 occupants; it'd be more than 7 occupants.
Thanks for clarifying that. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, can I remind councillors this is a planning committee. We are not here to judge our housing department or competency of officers. I find it actually quite insulting to do that. And a point I'd like to make is that on a housing strategy committee, I discovered that we actually have no functionally homeless people now in BCP, which is a massive turnaround and achievement of the council. And I have a new facility that I visited that's happening in Christchurch, supported living for people in my ward. And yes, we have had in the past, in some locations, issues with management. But I think to start saying that we can't manage our homeless people, and we aren't bankrupt. We've set a 4-year budget. We have financial issues as a council, but I really wish councillors would stop saying that we're bankrupt. It doesn't exist, and we're actually way off of Section 114 as well. Regarding the 7 bed, obviously we can't put more than 7 bedrooms in here. The plans that show 7 bedrooms are part of the documents of the approval. So there are 7 bedrooms. In theory, as Councillor Flagg says, there are double potential couples could be living in there, so you could have up to 14, which would seem excessive in a house of that size to have 14 people living in there. But I think to restrict it, I think the housing department could manage that successfully. I think with homelessness, it is mentioned a couple of examples that were given. Quite often it's because of family breakdown, and more often than not, I think the homelessness is probably, in this case, aimed at singles. And having had some cases in the past where we've had mums and kids and stuff like that, this isn't what we're talking about in this facility. I do agree. I think that the management plan is light on detail. and I'm very pleased to hear that the antisocial behaviour has reduced or dropped. As I mentioned earlier, I think that the reason why the ASB team don't have anything recorded is because nothing has been recorded by ASB team. I'm slightly disappointed that our councillors for the ward, if they've been working for the last 2 years, haven't thought to check with the ASB team that it has been recorded. If it is the police, then yes, the police don't feed back. But again, looking forwards, I'm minded to support this, but I do think we need to strengthen up with some conditions. And Councillor Carl Brown did make a couple of suggestions about conditioning the permissioning. One of those things being partnership working and a 24-hour contact number. And I think that 24-hour contact number needs to be obviously somebody in the housing department and also the ASB team. Because in my experience, the ASB team, have been very good. Every time I've had to deal with ASB notices, I generally get feedback within sort of 24 hours from them to say that we've dealt with this issue, we've served some other notice or whatever they do, and especially when dealing with housing associations, they work very closely with housing associations on troublesome residents. So yeah, I would support the conditioning of this, and I think as a council we've got a responsibility to our homeless, and to be in a situation where we have no functionally homeless people in BCP at the moment, I think is a massive achievement, and it's done because of our housing department. So I won't hear officers from a housing department run down a planning committee. It's not fair, it's not right. They have a difficult job to do. With some of our more challenging residents in our community and wider society, and I welcome the work they do. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gould, did you want to?
No, thanks, Joe. I was just like to say that at an appropriate time, if you want me to try and summarise some of the debate to help members move forward.
Okay,
but we might not be there yet.
Sorry, we have a proposal and a second with a minor change of condition. The condition on partnership working, obviously, I think that has been taken offline, that information flow of sharing that contact numbers is happening with the residents. So, sorry. Yeah, well, we've just talked about it now. So so Councillor Martin.
Can I suggest another condition? Can I suggest that obviously the residents are saying they didn't know about antisocial behaviour. We don't want to, I'm reluctant to grant this permanently, but I was thinking, could we put a 3-year condition on it that will grant it for 3 years, and then it'll be reviewed again after 3 years, and they'll lose the hostel status if we've still got problems.
Okay,
that's just a suggestion.
We'll hold that information. Councillor Salmon.
So I have to say, I don't think reducing the amount of sites that provide assistance to people facing homelessness or people who are rough sleeping will make the problem go away, or do anything at all to reduce the amount of antisocial behaviour associated with rough sleeping is utterly delusional. Utterly delusional. And I think beneath members of this committee, luckily, we are not here to debate that. We are here to debate planning matters only. Now, there are no valid reasons to refuse this application on planning grounds. That is a concrete fact. Nobody who has spoken against this application has offered any valid reason under our planning framework to refuse it. Now, I think looking at the management plan is as robust as it needs to be. We do not need to get down into the minutiae of detail we're getting into now. We have perfectly competent ward councillors who are able to liaise with residents and make sure they're aware of the reporting process. We do have incredibly hard-working officers who are underfunded, and I take issue with whether or not we're bankrupt. If we were a business, we would have ceased trading, but that's a bigger debate. I think we need to get on and make a decision here.
Okay, Councillor Salmon. Mr. Gould, did you want to just summarise where we are? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, been listening to the debate, and just a couple of points. I myself had been looking at the management plan during the discussion, and I would find myself tending to agree with the point that's been raised by Councillor Tarling and Councillor Carr-Brown. I think if members were moving toward approving this application, I think that could do with bolstering slightly, certainly to include a name or a contact number for 24/7/365. There is a number in the management statement, but it seems to relate to the maintenance of the property. So I'm not sure whether that's the number that people would need to call if there were issues around ASB, antisocial behaviour. So there's been a discussion about adding to that condition. If members look at the condition as it's currently worded, condition 2 in the recommendation, it says the change of use hereby approved shall at all times be carried out in strict accordance with the approved management plan dated November 2024. We'd need to reword that, Chair. We would probably be looking at wording along the lines of within X period of weeks or days of the date of this permission, a management plan should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Then it shall go on to set out what details it needs to include, and obviously then picking up the need for a 24-hour, 7 days a week contact number relating to ASB, and then obviously that it should be adhered to at all times. So if members were minded to approve the application, we'd probably seek delegated authority back to the head of planning operations for officers to word up a condition along that time. It would be useful though, Chair, to hear from the committee about what period of time, because obviously this is retrospective, the use is already operational, so we wouldn't be looking at a prior to commencement condition because it's already commenced. So we would normally put alternative wording along the lines of within X weeks. So I've just drafted 4 weeks, seems reasonable, but you know, if members wanted that to be 3 weeks, 2 weeks, that would be within your gift. We also heard from Councillor Slade about the potential for a condition to limit the number of residents to no more than 7. If members look at paragraph 3 of the report, it actually states there that there will be 7 single people. So that would seem reasonable to me to impose a condition that no more than 7 residents, to avoid that issue of couples maybe then doubling the number. We also heard a suggestion for a temporary consent for potentially 3 years. That is again within the gift of the committee to decide whether that's the route that they want to go down. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Gould, that's useful. If I first come to the proposer, Councillor Salmon, are you supportive of that guidance?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And the 4 weeks to
yeah,
prepare the
if it's felt we can beef up the management plan here as a condition, yeah, go for.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Slade, you're happy with that also? Thank you. Councillor Gillett.
Just on that, if we're sort of beefing up the plan, in paragraph 3 of the management plan, it says the Richmond Park Crescent will be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then when they talk about their staffing levels, they'll say there'll be 1 full-time member of staff on site Monday to Friday, 9 AM to 5 PM. So if it is 24 hours a week and there's a contact number, then that probably needs a little bit of clarification on paragraph 1 and 2 of 3 of the point 3 of the management plan.
Mr. Gould.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That I'm looking at the moment, it says exactly what you said, Councillor, but it then does go on to say, and a contractor on site at all other times, including evenings, night times and weekends. So to my mind, that reads that there's 24/7 coverage. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Pervin.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I agree with everything that's been said, but I would like to suggest on the conditions of how long we have it as a trial, if you like, that we reduce it to a year, because it's already been in existence for quite a long time. We've heard that for 6 months or more, maybe more, things have improved. Another year, if they continue as they are now, as we're hearing that the conditions are much, much better and the ASB is not a particular issue now, that then we can hopefully be fairly assured that it's on the right path. If during that year conditions deteriorate as we hear they were a year and more ago, then, you know, to leave that for 3 years is quite a long time for the residents. So I would suggest a year.
Well, Mr. Gould, just a comment. So we're saying the condition is follow the management plan, and if they're not adhering to a management plan, but would you think there needs to be a time?
So there's a couple of points that officers will need, obviously, members to decide on if they are going to vote to approve the application. We've talked about rewording the condition to require a new management plan to be submitted within X period. I'd like guidance from members whether they feel that's within 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. And then Councillor Pedevin has just raised the point about the potential for a temporary consent for the permission. Again, it's entirely within members' gifts. If they felt a year was appropriate, fine. If they feel 3 years. So again, it's over to the committee really as the decision maker to decide what period of time they would like that to be.
Thank you. Councillor Gillett.
Very quickly, the management plan was only introduced last November. So before that, there was a different management plan which we can't see. But that feels like that must be the management plan which was failing. If the ASB has declined in the last 6 months, that's because of the new management plan. We haven't got a copy of the old one, but this was the one that was probably introduced as part of the planning application, because it looks like there were questions raised, and this management plan suddenly emerged in November 24.
Thank you for those. So, Councillor Salmon, so as a proposal, so the main thing is it 4 weeks that the management plan should be produced, and are you thinking it should be a temporary?
I'm quite happy with 4 weeks. In terms of the temporary permission and all of that, I almost feel like that's moot. If things go wrong, it doesn't matter if it's temporary or permanent. That should still be you're no longer sticking to the plan, or the plan's not fit for purpose. I'm not sure there's any benefit to saying, oh, we'll review this in a year, review it in 3 years. Either it works or it doesn't, and that needs to be identified straight away if it's not working, rather than waiting for a review. So yeah, a new plan within 4 weeks, and I do trust our officers to get this right. I know there's a lot of desire to do right for our residents and to be seen to do right by our residents by adding in all of these conditions and so forth, and I'm happy with all of them. I'm just not sure we need to be drilling down to this level of detail.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Tarling.
Yes, thank you. So the addendum to the proposal we've got for us is that we agree to delegate to the head of planning that the management plan is reinforced with a condition, and that there will be in this management plan a partnership working agreement and the circulation of the contact numbers, which for anybody who's interested is 01202 128 883 for the ASB team. There is an email address as well on the website, and that we're limiting or just confirming that there's no more than 7 residents staying in the home. And I mean, at the moment, Councillor Pedevin has said a year. We had 3 years. I think a year would mean it coming back to this committee, because this is a planning condition we're putting on, not a housing management condition, because this isn't a housing management committee. This is a planning committee. So this is a local planning act type thing that we're doing. Is we're granting a temporary permission for either a year, which means it comes back to this committee next year, or 3 years. I don't think a year is necessarily long enough. It does mean that this committee will be looking at it again. I'm happy to go with the general consensus on that. Somewhere between 1 and 3 years, I think, is appropriate. Reading the room here. So yeah, I think that's the amendment to the or the conditioning that I suggest we put to Councillor Salmon's proposal.
Thank you for that. So if everyone understands that, did you want to come back, Mr.
again, as normal, Chair, just at the point before the vote, if you just want me to quickly summarise what seems to have been, so that members are crystal clear on what they're voting on.
Please, go ahead.
Oh, you want me to do that now? Okay, fine. So I do think, Chair, we still need some clarification from members on whether they're going to impose a temporary consent, and if so, for how long. Councillor Tarling just said somewhere between 1 and 3 years, but that's we need a bit more.
Yeah, I think no, but I think the proposer was suggesting that the management plan is the bones of it, so there's no need for restricting.
Okay, so on that basis then, Chair, it would be, as I've understood it, a rewording of the management plan condition to require within 4 weeks of the date of the planning permission a new management plan to be submitted, and that shall include details of partnership working and a 24-hour, 7 days a week contact number, contact details, because it could also be email, but contact number certainly. And then that shall obviously be adhered to at all times. Then there's another new condition for no more than 7 residents within the U, and we're not going for the temporary consent. And as I've said earlier, Chair, obviously just to give delegated authority back to the head of planning operations for officers to work up those conditions. And then just to remind members that I think there was a brief update in the addendum that they're mindful of that.
Thank you for that. That's clear. Councillor Clements.
Thank you, Chair. I do feel more confident that hopefully the management plan will be tightened up and more cohesive, but I still do have concerns actually regarding the fact that if this is actually the case, that the management plan was only put into force in November when they wanted to put the application in. And if there was no management plan before that, I know that I sound like I'm really, really strung up with this, but I am, because I think it's important. So if there was no management plan previously, why wasn't there? And if with the management plan things have improved, which it would seem they have, then I think to impose a year's trial period is a good amount of time to actually prove that the successes of having this management plan in place will continue for a further period and give more confidence to the fact that it is being managed well for the sake of everybody, for the residents in the hostel and for the neighbouring community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin.
I'm agreeing with Joe totally, and I think we should have a vote on whether it should be a temporary period. I think, and I think I'd be happy for 1 or 2 years.
So the proposer.
Yeah, so I'm not keen on this temporary thing. I'm not quite sure what the benefit is. If we grant permission today and in 3 months' time antisocial behaviour flares up and then the management plan is not being adhered to, then they're in violation of the permission that's been granted and the council can take appropriate enforcement action. It doesn't need us to review it again in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. There's no practical benefit to us reviewing this decision again in 3 years or in a year. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. I do not see the benefit of putting in that we review it. It should be constantly being reviewed. And yeah, there's no point in putting it in. I mean, I'm happy to put it in, but this is a very busy committee. This is a very expensive committee to run. It's a committee that arguably isn't being run at capacity. I know I've got a bee in my bonnet about not having Mr. Firth here. I wish he was, and I'm not saying anything about the quality of the officers we do have, but I remember when we used to regularly have somebody from legal in support in these meetings, and we don't have that now because of cost cutting. To go, we should have another meeting in 3 years' time to review this decision, or in a year's time, when we really don't need to. It provides no quality of life for residents. I think we have to be sensible with our limited resources as a council that is struggling financially, to say it euphemistically.
Thank you for that. Councillor Slade, you either way, who you support Councillor Salmon with no time?
I still support Councillor Salmon.
With no time
no restriction.
constraint, it's just focus on that.
If it isn't being adhered to, it's a breach, we deal with it at the time. That's my opinion.
Last point, Councillor Martin.
I just think it would be easier legally for. I'm just thinking. I know we're cash strapped, but we are here for our residents, and our residents are suffering. And we need to make sure that they're paying poll tax, council tax, sorry, same as everybody else, and we're here for them as well. And for that reason, I think we should put the 2 years on.
Councillor Sum.
I think if we're not confident that if the management plan wasn't being stuck to in 3 months' time, then we can't approve this application. If we don't feel that mechanism exists, if the council is so dysfunctional that that wouldn't happen, then we can't approve it. There's no benefit to reviewing this decision in 2 years' time. If the plan's not being stuck to, that needs to be acted on immediately. And I do trust that officers would do that. Yeah, it's why waste officers'
Mr.
time?
Gould, do you?
I was just going to sort of add, obviously listening to the debate, you know, we do grant planning permissions fairly regularly with temporary consent. And I think, you know, we've seen that with some of the event-based applications that members have seen in the last year or two, you know, along the seafront. I take Councillor Salmon's point. The reality is that sometimes operations and uses don't run in accordance with the planning conditions on that planning permission. And I think that in those instances where there's been a slight nervousness about the use, for example, then a temporary permission allows you at that point to say, enough, it didn't work. Notwithstanding the fact you would have planning conditions, you know, like the management plan. So that's why I think that, you know, why you could go down the route of a temporary permission, but you've got to move on the table, I believe, Chair.
I mean, I tell you what, it's not a hill I want to die on. Let's whack 3 years on it then, and say we'll grant it for 3 years to be reviewed in 3 years' time. But I also don't want the fact that it's a temporary thing to be used as any kind of excuse to go, oh, well, it's being reviewed in 6 months anyway, and things like that. I think it's key that this is proactively monitored, and the temporary thing isn't used as an excuse to let things slide. But yeah, if everybody feels more comfortable with 3 years, let's whack on 3 years and see it again in 3 years' time.
Okay, thanks for confirming that. And Councillor Slade, you're happy to go with that. I think that was general feeling of a room. So we heard the summary. Did you want to go through?
Well, can we just clarify, because I originally proposed a year. I think Councillor Martin proposed 2. Now Councillor Salmon is saying 3. So we need
3 years. Yeah.
3 years.
So, Ms. Rhodes, did you want to go through where we are, what we're voting on, please, with the extra conditions?
So as far as I understand, Mr. Gould can correct me if I'm wrong. There will be a new management plan within 4 weeks submitted with the contact telephone numbers and 24-hour contact details. There will be a condition that no more than 7 residents are in the premises at a time, and that will be issued for a 3-year temporary condition.
Yes, I think we've got that. So everyone's clear what we're voting for. So if you're in favour of that, if you vote now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thank you. If you're against, show now.
1.
And if you want to abstain.
1.
So that application is approved as set out with those extra conditions. Thank you. So we shall go straight into the next application. Yeah, so yeah, Councillor Martin's going into the public gallery. So item 6B is 98 Gladstone Road East, Bournemouth. And Welly, if you want to present.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Just bear with me. Oops, sorry, just bear with me. Right. Can you see the screen, Chair?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So the application site is 98 Gladestone Road, east in Bournemouth. Is for a 2 and single story rear extension to a detached residential dwelling and a garden to the rear of the property. So basically, the key impacts of the proposed development are the character and appearance of the area, residential amenity, impact on trees, highways, and biodiversity net gain. Just to put it in context, so to your right is the proposed block plan, which shows the proposal hashed in gray. So there, if you can see my cursor, so the property's got this stepped rear elevation. And just to put it in context, you can see the area sort of consists of large detached residential dwellings. So the application site is that one starred in yellow. And these are just the photographs. So if you look at the photograph on your left, that's actually the rear of the application property. So you can see that's stepped rear elevation, and to the right is number 100 on the same photo. That's number 100 Gladestone East Road. So that extension would actually extend sort of beyond that window that you can see on the right. And this is just the rear garden of the property. This is the relation. So this is the actual application property on the right. So that's just the access from Gladestone and 96. So it shows the relationship with number 96. So we can see there's windows in there on number 96. So so the case officers highlighted in red there where the windows actually cited the existing windows that we think would be impacted on by the proposed development. So I'll just rush through to the existing plans. So that's the ground floor plan as it is. So that extension will go there to the rear, and that garage will they'll get rid of that garage to direct the garden room. So these are the proposed plans. So that's a 2-story extension would include that dining area at ground floor level and bedroom 1 and 2 at the first floor level. Those circles in red just indicate that they're proposing to insert new windows on the existing build, which on this side where the cursor is, that's number 96 Gladestone and 100 to your left. So the case officers kindly again indicated those windows which are proposed on the existing southwest elevation at first floor and ground floor level. So therefore, the main impact, if I is on number 96. I'll just go back to 96. I'll go back to those photos. Just bear with me. So basically these are the existing windows at number 96. So what we're saying is if they then insert those 2 windows which I showed you at first floor and ground floor level, there will be an impact of actually overlooking to number 96 to the detriment of the living conditions. And whereas with number 100, due to that, the depth of that extension, we feel that it will actually create an overbearing and loss of outlook for the occupants of number 100. So the application is actually being recommended for refusal. And just to highlight, I'm sure members have read the actual report. There's an alleged use of the property as a HMO currently, but that's for the enforcement case officer to look into. It's still being investigated at the moment. So this application is purely for a residential dwelling rather than HMO. So if there be any questions regards HMO, unfortunately, I won't be able to give out any further information than what we know at the moment. So basically, so the recommendation is to refuse the application contrary to policy CS41 of the core strategy and BAP2 of the Boscombe and Porksdown neighborhood plan, and contrary to the NPPF. It's been identified that due to the siting of the proposals, there will be little harm to the character of the area. But as I showed you earlier in the presentation, there's a significant detriment come to a neighboring amenity at 96 and 100 Gladestone Road East. So as such, we're recommending this application for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We'll move to speakers then, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have one speaker registered in objection. That's Mr. Johnston Hopkins. If you'd like to come up to the table and turn the microphone on, and you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of myself and our neighbours at 96A and B. I'm here to object in the strongest possible terms to the proposed planning application on the basis of its poor design, disregard for neighbours' right to light and privacy, and the unacceptable impact it would have on the amenity and infrastructure of our community. Most pressing is the issue of light and overshadowing. The proposal includes the construction of a 2-storey wall just 1 metre from our house. This will block natural light into both our kitchen and our child's bedroom. These are primary living spaces, and this loss of daylight will leave them in near permanent shadow. This is not only oppressive, it's detrimental to our health and well-being, and particularly concerning for a child's bedroom, which should be a bright, safe and comfortable space. And it's clearly at odds with both national guidance and Bournemouth's core strategy policy, CS41, which seeks to protect the amenity of neighbouring residents. For our neighbours, the extension will bring shade to the bedrooms, lounges and garden at the rear of the property. Equally concerning is the effect on privacy. The design increases the proximity of upper-storey windows that directly overlook neighbouring gardens to the south. The windows on the west create an unacceptable level of intrusion into the private rooms of 96A and 96B. This results in a clear and unacceptable loss of privacy, contradicting planning policy, which highlights the need for all developments to ensure a high standard of residential amenity with minimal overlooking and overshadowing. The plans create a narrow, dark alleyway between properties, adding a sense of enclosure, reducing natural surveillance and compromising safety. This design is overbearing and oppressive, entirely inconsistent with the established pattern of development in the area. In terms of bulk, scale, massing and density, this proposal represents a clear case of overdevelopment. It fails to respect the character of the surrounding neighbourhood and increases vital intrusion, again contrary to CS41, which requires development to be well integrated and appropriate in context. There are also acoustic concerns. The tight spacing between properties already creates an echo effect, and the new layout with added windows and hard surfaces would act as a sound chamber, amplifying everyday noise and reducing residential tranquility. The development will place pressure on the shared draining services between 96A and B and number 98. These services are already under strain, and no adequate assessment has been provided on how they will cope with additional usage. The risk of overflows, blockages and flooding cannot be ignored. Property has been a HMO for the last 13 years, and we are concerned that this is an expansion of the HMO rather than a conversion to a single family dwelling. Currently, there is 9 people in 98, with 5 of them with cars, which is increased congestion on an already extremely overcongested street. In conclusion, this planning application fails on multiple fronts. It disregards privacy, right to light, design integrity, infrastructure capacity, and the overall character of the area. I respectfully urge the Council to reject this application in defence of our residents' quality of life and uphold the core strategy of good design CS41. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We have nobody registered to speak on behalf of the applicant, so we now move on to ward councillors. And Councillor Farquhar, please come up to the microphone. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee. It's always a pleasure to have the welcome and the reception that I can exercise my role as a ward councillor to call in applications on behalf of residents. And may I just praise the resident, Mr. Hawkins, for his very good and succinct presentation. It's covered a lot of ground. I will only cover a small bit of ground in my particular case, but I always welcome residents having the opportunity to address the committee, and I think that's the reason why the role of councillors is so important, to actually call in an application, whether it be refused, recommended for refusal, application, etc. Because I think that's the principal role of a ward councillor. So that aside, I'm also wish to give thanks to the representatives of the Bournemouth Echo that are here today, because I think their reports actually and articles help to demystify the prospect of a planning committee being scary, but also demystify the actual constraints that are within the committee, but also planning terms. So that comes on to my main point and why I called this one in. I was calling it in on behalf of residents for their support, but my principal concern is that this is listed, and the officer confirmed it in the presentation, as a dwelling house application for not necessarily single occupancy. The nature of that is because I'm concerned that if this is actually an HMO, and I refer you to Article point 26, it's noted that property is subject to an enforcement complaint, and representations have raised concerns of a dwelling house operating as an HMO, conditioning the garden room to be ancillary and not separate, blah, blah, blah. The alleged use of the premises as an HMO is a separate enforcement matter at this time. Absolutely. And so it should be. But if it is actually registered as an HMO and being used as an HMO, then I think the application from the householder for a dwelling house should be actually listed as an HMO. Now, it's very good to have the ASB number read out. I made sure that I was up to date, and it's one of the things which I share with my residents, but I also share with my residents the importance to report HMOs that are in use, because the last time I was presenting here, we had some no small amount of discussion as regards within the Boscombe East Ward how many HMOs there are. So I had a look at the planning register, the HMO public register of Bournemouth and Poole, which is spreadsheet style and stretches to 29 pages. And this property is actually listed at I don't know what the registration number is, 222954, and expires on the 27th of August, 98 Gladstone Road East. And it's listed being under the agency of a not the householder, but a limited company. But what was of interest to me there was that, based upon the plans, where I see 4 bedrooms listed in the actual application, is that on the HMO public register of PDF, it actually lists 2 stories, 7 total bedrooms, total living rooms 1, permitted occupants 10, and we've heard Mr. Hopkins, I do apologise, actually say that 9 occupants from neighbours in there at the moment. Permitted households being 7, shared kitchen 1, shared bathroom 2, shared kitchen 2, shared bathroom 0. Oh, sorry, my mistake, reading the wrong line. 7 permitted households, shared kitchen 1, shared bathrooms 2, shared WCs only 1. So what I'm presenting to the committee here is that, are we actually hearing a dwelling house, or are we hearing an HMO? Because I think there are planning considerations which need to be taken in place if this is an HMO, which is actually on the register, that's actually applying as a dwelling house. Such things as number of vehicles which are parking, but also in the photos which are shown, the number of bins which are actually provisioned in that alleyway between the 2 properties. I counted 4, which I presume is 2 waste and 2 recycling. Whereas 7 households, I think the entitlement is a lot more. So what I'd ask the committee to consider is, actually, are we having a misrepresentation of a planning application here as a dwelling house, or do we actually have a property which is on the HMO register, the public register, which is actually, by anecdotal evidence, is actually being used as an HMO by 9 occupants across who knows how many households. So that's what I would like the planning committee to consider. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farquhar. So, Welly, did you just want to come back with anything on what's been discussed either by the objector or the councillor? Again, just focus on your point that this is treated as a householder application.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, basically, as I said in the presentation, I think the application is actually for a householder. There's no further information that has come from enforcement other than them trying to follow up whether it's being used as an HMO. So I think members should focus on the householder aspect rather than the HMO. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So no questions on the HMO status, that's being investigated. So are there any questions on the application for the officer? Okay, if we go straight into debate, Councillor Salmon.
So again, we see an application called in by ward councillors not to challenge the officer decision, but to engage in some political point scoring and grandstanding. I take a very dim view of that. This is a significant waste of council resources. And actually now there is a chance that, against the wishes of residents and officer recommendation, that this committee could approve this application when it would have been refused if it hadn't been called in. I think we really need to make an effort as a committee to better educate councillors about the role of this committee.
Councillor Salmon,
and
focus
the
on the
calling process.
application.
On this application, Mr. Hopkins, who's taken time out to correctly point out why it should be refused. This application would have been refused weeks ago, I assume, if it had not been called in. I propose that we refuse it now and don't waste any more time of this committee. This is clearly an application which should have been refused. That was the officer recommendation. I propose we get on and do that now.
Thank you. Councillor Gillett? Mike.
Happy to second the refusal.
Okay, any other debate? No, so we've got the proposal to refuse as set out. So if you want to refuse, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's unanimous, Chair.
So that application is refused as set out. And that is the last item.